Welcome everybody. I am Jill Conrath, sales nerd, sales author, and sales speaker. And I am here today for the final in our series, our 6-part video series on creating engaging presentations. We have already covered in our first events, we've talked about what it takes to actually create the presentation in terms of like, how do you find the story and what goes into, putting it all together so that it's really, really tight and nice and it just flows. Then we talked about how to engage people during the actual presentation, and it could be if it's an in-person meeting, it could be an online meeting, or it could be even on the phone when you're sending something and going through what you've sent with this person. And finally, we've taken a look at analytics. We started out with more macro analytics where we took a look at how sales leaders and salespeople could figure out their success rate and how they might leverage that to create improvements and drive more sales. And finally, today we're going to go a deep dive into presentation analytics, something that is most people have never heard of, and certainly it's very different from what most people are experiencing on an everyday basis. My guest today is Luke Goetting. Hi, Luke. Say hi.
Hey, Jill, and everyone.
Let me tell you a little bit about Luke. He is an award-winning presentation specialist. He's the co-founder of Puffingston, which is a presentation agency out of Austin, Texas. He's an independent Prezi expert, and he has created the best business Prezi presentation of all and won awards for that. He's also created presentations for TEDx talks and South by Southwest acceleration winners. So this guy knows his presentations. Is that right? That's you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot to live up to, but I'll do my best here.
You'll do your best. Well, yeah. You know what? Let me just say, I have saved the best for the last because I honestly really like how you have described what you do and what you say you specialize in. You say, and I quote, "We specialize in transforming stale business presentations into visually engaging stories."
Exactly.
I love it. And let me just say that based on my experience being out there working with sales organizations everywhere, big and small companies, there are a lot of stale business presentations. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That was one of the things that struck me when I just got out into the business world, was that I expected the smaller companies to have okay presentations, but I would go to these large conferences and see the biggest companies in the industry doing the same offenses. So definitely the opportunity applies, small or large company, to create more engaging presentations.
It's funny that you say that because I've seen the same things. You would expect, some of these leading edge companies, state of the art, big companies to have the best things. And sometimes they are just very traditional and they bullet point you to death.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's stale in today's business world. So what does it take to create a visually engaging story? I mean, let's start with that.
It takes a strong message. So you'll hear this advice often repeated no matter the presentation platform, but it's quite important to really take a moment or several moments before you ever get into the editor of the tool to really think about your message, think about how the story flows, and really strategize it in a way that's engaging and relevant to the audience. If you just start creating slides because the template tells you to, then you're already off to probably the wrong track versus what you should be doing, which is strategizing a powerful message.
And when you work with clients, just give me an example of how you start with them. They bring you in and say, make something, poof, make us something wonderful, and you're supposed to just go away and do it, or what do you do?
One of the things we really stress, and Prezi really enables us to take this to the next level, is the context of a presentation, sort of the higher level. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges with slides is they're so linear and it's very difficult to show the hierarchy of those thoughts, of those ideas. So oftentimes the structure is actually kind of present already, but it's very difficult for an audience member to pick up on it because it's just slide after slide with no visual hierarchy. So we'll spend some time.
21, 41, 61. I mean, we can keep going forever and ever.
Yeah, you get lost in a sea of slides, and it's really hard to remember, okay, were we in a detail level? Were we talking about something at high level? It's just so hard to keep track without some of those visual cues. Just think about your phone or think about a website. It's pretty easy to follow where you are in that overall navigation, but with presentations, they just don't have that equivalent until now.
Right. So structure is important to start out with, and just kind of think about the overall structure that you want. But you when we were talking, you told me that you see some key problems a lot of times. I mean, when you go out and you work with clients, you see them dealing with some of the same issues all the time.
Exactly. And it tends to be that people just follow the template that somehow just became prevalent in business communities. For example, starting immediately with an about us, where we're listing the number of employees, the number of branches, a lot of information that until you've given the client a reason to care is somewhat irrelevant. So that would be an example. But again, if high level, I would say strategizing the content in a way that matters to the audience is where people need to start and often fail to do so.
And then how about one of the things you mentioned was that marketing has all these analytics, but we've never done anything with presentations. So you mentioned that was a real issue, and nobody even thinking about that kind of thing.
Correct. So it always amuses me the way people answer the question, how did that presentation go?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. They answer in such fluffy, vague terms, pretty well. They seemed engaged.
They loved it. They loved us.
Yeah, so that's the flowery report you'll give to your boss probably, but really we need to get these metrics. We need to get some data to take that to the next level, because if we think it's going really well and it's not, and we're not creating that engagement, we would want to know about that. And right now there's just not the opportunities to do that. And it really applies. We'll talk today a lot about sharing stuff remotely via email or other forms of digital communication. It applies the same way. They seem to like the presentation. We have no idea if they even opened it, let alone liked it.
Yeah, I think that's really true. We have no idea if they even opened it. I mean, that's pretty scary that we take all this time and prepare to send something out to prospective clients, people that we're really hoping to buy from us, and we don't even know if they opened it at the very base level.
Exactly. So this presentation analytics concept, it was one of those that I actually didn't know I really needed until I started using it. And then I just got so excited about the potential because, like I said, we haven't ever tracked much with presentations, or most organizations have never tracked anything with presentations.
And just track if you've given them. Did you give a presentation? Check. Done. Yes.
So now we can go so much deeper and gain so many more insights than were ever possible before. It really opens up a new world as far as strategy, content, engagement.
Okay, let's talk about those very specific analytics that you can get today that weren't available, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that give you, let's take a granular look at that presentation and tell people what they can find out there that they don't even know that they may need.
Absolutely. So to set sort of the context, we're talking about sharing something digitally in this particular context. And so right now, the default that we see with most businesses is they will attach a PowerPoint or a PDF and they'll email it. And so right away you run into the challenge of, well, I have an attachment. Is it going to get blocked by a corporate firewall and never even make it through in the first place? Or is the file size too large? So right away, that's an issue. So then even when they do receive it, I've got some potential formatting issues. Do they have the right fonts installed? Did we scale it back so much on a PDF level that it's just really boring to look at, and frankly, is it going to get any engagement that way? So already by using Prezi Next Analytics, before we even get into the analytics, by being able to share an online link, we've already gotten past a few barriers with the traditional method. So then to get actually to your core question, right away through presentation analytics, we're able to track, number one, did they open it? And we're going to get a real-time notification when that happens. So it's not just going to be looking back. We can get it right now. I know on my desktop that my prospect, my client, just opened that. We're going to be able to track slide by slide, frame by frame, how much time they spent in this presentation. So if they only went through section 1 and then closed it, I'm going to know that. If they instead not only went through it, but shared it with 3 or 4 coworkers, I'm going to see that there were 3 or 4 unique viewers on this presentation. And then Prezi's even going to give me an aggregate report as to the slides and how that whole group interacted with them. So it's just so much depth and so much information that is not even close to what anyone's getting these days.
So let's take a look at that depth of information just from a salesperson. And I know we're going to talk about other digital ways of sharing too, but from a salesperson's perspective, and you are selling too, because as the leader of your company, you're out there selling too. How do you use this information? Can you give us some examples about how it works on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. So I think the number one thing you can start looking at is my presentation effective, right? We talked about that. That's fundamentally what we're interested in knowing. And so I'll give you an example, something we shared on social media, right? And so it's a presentation, and we could see that when we shared it via Twitter, for example, people would open it, but the drop-off rate was pretty quick. They really were just looking for something quick hitting. They weren't interested in going through an entire presentation. However, we changed up some of our communication methods. We brought it into LinkedIn groups, and we shared it on LinkedIn. And through Prezi, we were able to actually track engagement levels and compare them versus different social media channels, and see that in LinkedIn, our average completion rate was 60-70% versus 5, 10, 15% on Twitter, just as an example. So right away, I can tell that my communication channel is effective, and that it was resonating with the people I was reaching in LinkedIn versus Twitter.
And that affects how you spend your marketing budget too, then, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, where you spend your time on your marketing budget, if it's not working over there, why? I mean, I guess you could track it all the way through the sales process too, to the prospects that come in via LinkedIn, the ones that come in via Twitter. Do they react and behave differently as well?
Exactly. So we can track that engagement. In addition, to take it a level further, we can actually look at which content is resonating. So as another example, we created sort of a conference summary for our client. They had a big industry event. They had breakout sessions throughout the entire time. And so they wanted to just create a recap document for people as a reminder of what they experienced. So we created this layout with 4 or 5 different sections. And right off the bat, when people landed on that presentation landing page, they were able to choose which section they wanted to get information from. And so we went back a week or 2 later after we had a couple hundred participants on that, and we were able to see, okay, which of these topics is resonating most. And what we found to be really interesting is the sort of native navigation was just in a clockwise formation, but that's not at all how people engaged with it. Section 1 was ranked 3rd or 4th, but section 3 was by far and away the most popular, section 5, etc. So that helps us to really strategize content, and we can, let's say next year for that conference, we actually now have some better insights into what people cared about the most.
Right. And also, I mean, I'm just thinking from a sales perspective. I mean, if you're talking about putting it out to the conference people, but I'm thinking about putting it out to potential clients, and seeing where they resonate is really crucial. I mean, to me, that's really crucial. If they are spending lots of time on slide 5 or part 5 and looking at that part, that means it's more important than like you said, something else. And as a seller, that's where I should be focusing on asking questions. That's where I should be planning on my next conversation, making sure that we talk about the issues or the solution or whatever it is that's on slide 5, part 5, whatever it is, because clearly they got stuck there for some valid reason that maybe I don't even know.
Exactly. So many people associate campaigns or analytics with larger campaigns where we're reaching a broad audience. Yeah. But you just hit on a really valuable part of this analytics that most people maybe wouldn't anticipate, which is really one-on-one sharing. I can generate a campaign link, just, hey, I'm going to send Jill this email, and it's got my presentation. And I'm going to see, hey, did Jill open it? Number 1. Did she view the entire thing? Did she view a handful of slides? Did she maybe email it on? So I used that example before, but that can be very, very powerful. And in fact, sometimes even more powerful, because you only shared it with that one person.
I always think of things from the salesperson's perspective. I mean, what is going to help us move towards revenue faster? And to know that data is vital. I mean, it's like insight into somebody's brain.
Absolutely.
And if I have that, and know that as a seller, I am literally able to change what I'm doing, literally able to change, focus on what really matters, not what I think is some vague thing that matters, because I know now. And knowing is really
very important part of the battle. Yeah. As a reminder, these these notifications, they don't expire, let's say. So, as a salesperson, I'm sending out dozens, hundreds of emails in the course of a week. Right. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I'll get a notification that one of my prospects had just viewed that presentation. And so now I know, rather than just sort of my regular cadence, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, I can actually be much more strategic in my follow-up because I know yesterday afternoon they viewed my presentation and they actually viewed it pretty long for the entire duration.
I think it's really fun to get something that goes bing.
Exactly.
Months or weeks later, and it's kind of like a wake-up call. Oh my God, I thought I'd lost him. But
right.
The reality is most of our clients are so busy that they sometimes disappear into some other work that has become a priority, and they forget you, but they really haven't forgotten you. They just simply have gotten busy, and then they do come back, and I've seen them come back quite frequently. And so it's our knowing when they're coming back or mentally gearing up to go that direction again really is a cue for salespeople to make that call again.
Absolutely. So one of the things we highly recommend to our clients is start to strategize. What do you want to do with these analytics for those sales purposes? If let's say it is 2 weeks afterward, are you going to follow up with a call a few minutes after you see they viewed that presentation? Are you going to wait a day, perhaps 2 days? So for different organizations and for different sales cycles, it might be different, but it's good to start putting those policies into place. And what's so exciting is you're not just reaching, you're not just feeling around in the dark anymore. You're actually, we're actually making informed decisions on our follow-up, and it's going to be so much more relevant because we already know that they were engaging with our content just recently.
Right. And I think it leads to much more intelligent conversations because when, that they're interested again right now. And these kind of analytics to me, I know that you're talking about the social media applicability of them, but again, I'm thinking of the average human being who has to sell to make a living, the average sales leader who's got all these salespeople who need to be more productive, and to have some tools that can give you insights into the client, to me, is really a special deal.
Exactly. It's had an effect just on my personal efforts in that once I got used to that, well, then I didn't want to send out proposals anymore without analytics. I didn't want to send out really any of our collateral resources anymore without analytics. Because it's just, now that you have that information, you're so much more informed, and it gets addictive in a way, but it's a powerful sales tool, and it really fits into the complement of all those other great analytics and reporting tools that exist today.
Right. And it's a function of learning how to use them appropriately so they don't seem spooky like you're a stalker. And I hate to say that, but I think we need to bring that up. But the reality is we can reach out to people and we can say things in a way that isn't like we're running spyware on them. It's just that we noticed that they recently opened the email again, and or they had mentioned earlier to get back, and you're just following up right now, and just be able to guide the conversation to something that makes sense right now and is tied into what they're interested in.
Exactly. It's a very complementary approach to what's already happening in Salesforce and HubSpot and a lot of other sales and marketing tools.
Yeah.
But there's always kind of this blind spot related to presentations. And now we're finally able to tap into that.
And I would like to just say, and expand the word presentations, and it is not just like a presentation that you give about here's our company or whatever. It could be, as you say, it could be a contract that you're sending out. It could be a proposal of something that that has a lot of different information. It could be so many different things, but what we're really talking about is digital content, and how can we leverage digital content in many forms to get data on it, so that we as a salesperson, sales leader, can be much more succinct and focused in our directions. So
exactly, we have a lot of clients. Again, this is kind of that complementary marketing and sales approach that are using these Prezis now as sort of their digital white papers. We've all been on the landing pages, we enter our information, and then we download a PDF, and PDFs are boring, frankly. So instead of that, maybe we have the Prezi acting, and you actually have the ability to toggle on an option to request a name and email address from someone viewing that presentation. And so that can really be my data source, and start to collect that information. Then they get into the Prezi, and it's interactive, it's dynamic. I can navigate to the content I want. It's not just going to go to my downloads folder and sit there and finally be deleted 3 months later.
Yeah, that's really good. So do you have any final comments about analytics? These detailed analytics that you would like to say before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think the top insight that we've gained is it can have applications for such a broad range, and we've talked about those today, but from that sales function, just every time pretty much what we've done is every time you're sending a presentation, generate an analytics link. It's just not a question anymore. And the information that we've gotten from that, the insights we've gotten from that is going to really help us create better presentations. And now we're evolving, right? Every time we're getting this feedback back, we're able to continue improving our sales presentation, continue to improve our messaging versus, I'm sure, Jill, you've seen so many organizations, presentations that have not changed in years because they're not assessing them. Some person made them.
I know.
Some person made them 3 years ago, and that's what it is, and you just have to deal with it, and that's not the way it should be with all this important data being collected.
Yeah, it's really fun to see how you can start leveraging the data, and it really increases your ability to better serve your customer because you are focusing on what matters to them and what is of interest to them, and when it is the right time for them to. You see all that kind of information. So, Luke, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And for everybody who's listening, I want you to go back and look at some of those presentations that you may have missed. We have 6 videos in this series. You are on number 6. There were 5 before this that are maybe even better than this one. I shouldn't say that, should I, Luke? This might be the
best, but the others are pretty good too.
We are leaving at the high spot. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and look at those other presentations too. They'll be well worth it.
Thank you.